Jira or Confluence?
Hang on.
Ned, this is Ed. I found a link to planning for cost accounting meeting yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I have that. I have that as well as the. I just pinged her.
Okay.
But so while we're waiting on that, I mean, I can basically give a quick update on the dev stuff since Kelly's not here. I don't have the meeting notes, but I can kind of go through the major stuff. I mean, and Ned, you can chime in to add color and detail about things. But the major focus. There have been three areas of focus. One is making sure that we've gotten all of the stuff off the Pyrofex machines. So we're in the middle of containerizing the CI/CD and build. In addition to the work that we did to containerize the websites, and then that makes it easy to move things to whatever infrastructure we want. So, in particular, we'll be moving that over to cloud-based solutions, and then from there to leased hardware. So that's been the one of the major focuses. A lot of the dev team are also focused on delivering delivering a repro that catches the unknown root bug. So there's been a lot of sort of focused effort by Kent and some of Lukash and Dom on trying to track down a reproduction of the unknown root error. And essentially what they've been doing is to put the basic framework that has sometimes caused the bug into a loop so they can automate the reproduction of that. And then Kent is adding some instrumentation in order to be able to capture a little bit more information to try to flush this bug out. So that's been a major blocker for testnet, is this unknown root. Last week they got the fix in that addressed this. The other major blocker on testnet had to do with some non-determinism in the replay, so that the replay was not generating was not finding a matching COM event to the way the execution trace happened in the first time it was run. I can write down the example if people are interested, but essentially they're providing additional, essentially a kind of sequence number com events in a way that doesn't force a sequentialization of the replay, which would dramatically slow things down.
Hey, Greg,
And then,
I actually
go ahead.
got the update, which I'm sharing on my screen for folks to look at while you're reviewing.
Okay, so good. So Kelly sent the link via Discord.
Okay, cool. Yeah, one of the community members sent me the link also.
Okay, yeah. So all right. So anyway, so she sent it to you via Discord, and you got that. I'll just finish off with a little bit of color, and then we have received a proposal from the White Block people, and we're quite excited about that. So that will help a lot with testing and other stuff. So I just want to I'll give more color. If you want to walk through the notes, Ned, now, then I'll go back return to that.
Okay, cool. So in general, we've shifted resources, so we have better coverage with our integration tests, and our goal is to fully understand and look for any instability and defects in the platform. And then we're also continuing our coverage on Mercury MVP. We've had a number of meetings. It's a long list. We're not quite through the list yet. We are diligently working on that. Rholang team is looking into some Stack Overflow errors related to nested AST. And we're also continuing refactoring. Let's see, there was a mixture of F and task procedures and unsafe run sync and task delay. So we're refactoring. And then again, we're working to update tests related to the DAG API. The Casper team is working on improving the test suite of Casper features, and we are done investigating the status of the cost accounting, and we have a plan in place for next steps to restart this work. The Node team, investigating and resolving bugs was the priority for this week. I say well, it's also most of the developers, I think all of them are going to be working. They don't have a holiday the next 2 days, so they'll be working. And they're working with Casper and the SRE teams to support them. And we're improving the metrics provided by our node. And we had a discussion on that yesterday, and we're looking into doing a proof of concept with the stat-state implementation. Storage team is investigating bugs and tests and on the platform. Some of that may have come up with some of the work that Joshie and I were doing. Some of the issues that we found, and I think Alan or Jim Whitescarver also found some issues. The system reliability team, planning to migrate to the new infrastructure. Kayvon is working on that. We have to be complete. We have a hard stop to be completed by the end of the month. We're investigating test failures, test improvements, and implementation fixes to the continuous integration. Yeah, we've had, overall, we've had issues with the CI, and we definitely need to get that corrected and working, as we rely on that pretty extensively. And for those of you who are on node testing, yesterday we have implemented RDoctor, which is a log aggregation tools, and that will help us support our debugging efforts. Let's see, all teams working to resolve blockers on testnet. It's definitely a priority. And I think that's it from the update. That seems to be everything. Questions? Greg, did you want to add anything?
Good. No, that's great. No, I really appreciate that. That's a lot more detail and color than I was giving. I was focusing on some of the major efforts in terms of priorities. Yeah, I do want to mention that we have received a proposal from White Block, and we're very excited about working with them. The nice thing about what this will do some of the, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, one of the biggest difficulties that we've had is the testnet is kind of deployed in the wild, so to speak. And then because we have this testnet deployment, when we find a bug, it's harder to reproduce this in the lab for the developers to go and whack at it. So with this testnet in a box solution, we'll be able to reproduce exactly these errors. It's a closed system. We can set up the configuration and just rerun the configuration that caused the error. And this will enable us to get much more quickly to bug fixes rather than have testnet hosed for a couple of weeks. So I'm very excited about that. But then it goes further because it will allow a kind of shard in a box solution, which I think a lot of community members have been talking about. So these two things these two efforts can potentially dovetail. But for me, I think it's a really important development because it significantly lowers the cost for validation on the network, which makes the barrier to entry for the validators much lower, at least in terms of deployment of hardware. So I'm very excited about the partnership, and as you guys met Zach and Neil a couple of weeks ago, so we're excited to bring them into the RChain community. And I wonder if people have any questions about that development.
Certainly sounds positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. So then moving on, I wanted to address something that came up. I think it was a cause for concern for some people. There's been a bit of a miscommunication around what was in the minutes with respect to IOB 6, or in particular the diversity of implementation proposal. So the board went back and reviewed the audio, and it was absolutely clear in the audio that the proposal did not get enough director votes. And then we checked, and the minutes that Evan sent out to be published did not have that as a proposal. So I don't know how between when Evan sent the minutes, so Evan was the secretary who recorded those minutes. I don't know what the miscommunication was between when the minutes went out and what has been seen by the community that was seen as ratified or supported by the directors, but it's also not the case. So we have both documents showing that the board did not ratify that as a ballot item to go on the membership meeting. So we're trying to track down exactly where the miscommunication was. That it was a simple mistake. We know it was a mistake.
Yeah. So Greg, actually, it was in an email thread. So when I went through my emails to publish the back minutes, the email thread that contained the two versions that Evan had sent out, I grabbed the one at the top of the chain instead of the one at the bottom of the chain.
Got it.
That's what happened.
Ah, I see. Okay, very, very good. So that clarifies that. And so then what got posted into the GitHub was the wrong version of the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
There's a discussion in the chain to that effect that this item that you'd mentioned didn't have enough support, and therefore the minutes were updated within hours. But yeah, if you don't go in the right place in the chain, then bad things happen.
I hear you. I understand. That's how it's how things happen. Understood. So there's apologies for any sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication about what the board position was, but it was very, very consistent, and we did go through the diligence. We do have the mechanism by which we've been documenting all of this stuff to be able to make those kinds of determinations. That said, I want to expand the conversation a little bit to a more substantive thing than just a documentation error. The substantive conversation has to do with the desire to have a spec. So, everyone on the RChain dev team and RChain management, to a person, as far as I know, wants to have a spec and wants to have diversity of implementation. I have been speaking openly with the dev team that after we get Mercury out the door, the next thing we want to do is to do a Haskell implementation. In order to do that properly and be able to have an apples to apples comparison, there has to be a corresponding spec. So nobody is attempting to block or nobody is opposed to there being a diversity of implementation. We very, very much believe in a diversity of implementation and do not want to hamper diversity of implementation. That said, now I want us to be clear on what a spec is and what producing a spec of the right level of detail would mean in terms of resourcing. Again, nobody within the dev team or management believes in the waterfall model of software. So we do not believe it is possible or even advisable to produce a spec and then from the spec produce code that conforms to the spec and expect that to work or meet market demands. Rather, the methodology that most healthy software projects have adopted, at least in the 30 plus years I've been doing software development, is the spec and the code co-evolve. As you write the code, you learn more about both the market requirements and the realities of deploying within a particular context of execution. And so that puts back pressure on the spec to evolve, which then opens up new features and other kinds of considerations for the code. So we fully believe that the spec and the code have to co-evolve until finally we have what should be the reference implementation, i.e. Mercury. And at that point, the spec becomes a documentation of Mercury and the running stack. And the running stack, by construction, corresponds to the spec. So that's sort of how mature software happens. We have an advantage because a lot of the software and the spec derive from well-established mathematics, but there are bits and pieces of this that are novel and are not of the same scope or caliber as we saw with the Ethereum yellow paper. So no disparagement meant at all, but the virtual machine described in the Ethereum yellow paper is essentially a virtual machine architecture that goes back at least 40 years. So most people who are familiar with this kind of art can write this kind of spec with both hands tied behind their backs and then blindfolded, because it's well understood. It's not rocket science. The main pieces of innovation in that have to do with the injection of resources to constrain or curtail the execution of the virtual machine and or the memory resources used, and the addition of specific opcodes related to crypto. Those are very, very mild, conservative extensions to a 40-year-old architecture, and as a result, there's the scope of writing that kind of spec is about 3-4 person weeks to get it nailed down. Now, given our resources, even taking one of our senior dev away for 3 to 4 person weeks would be a significant impact to the project, right? That would effectively blow our deadlines with respect to Mercury. But the reality is that we have a much bigger scope. The execution mechanism, our space, is not a 40-year-old, well understood single-threaded virtual machine. It's a different beast. There's a number of key innovations in that while they go back, while the innovations themselves go back 30 or some odd years, that doesn't mean that they have been put together in this particular way in this kind of production setting. And so getting that spec is not simply 3 to 4 person weeks. It's a much bigger effort, and that's just the beginning. We also have the Rholang spec and the relationship of the Rholang spec to the interpreter. And then we have the cost accounting. And just to mention a few of the pieces in addition to the Casper spec. So putting that all together is a much larger effort, and we want that effort to not be throwaway. In particular, we would like that effort to lead to a specification that fits in with a formal automated verification of the code. So putting all those pieces together means that we are talking at a minimum a 6 to 9 person month effort. And we can't afford to put that we can't afford to put that in front of the delivery of Mercury. We want to put that post facto after Mercury as a part of updates to Mercury. So having the community force us to organize our resources in this way was deemed by the directors of the co-op as not the best use of the dev resources. And so it was not, it didn't seem like the kind of thing that we could reasonably put on the ballot. Especially because if you're more likely to, if you're, let's put it this way, if you're a more experienced software developer, then you'll sort of understand the considerations that I've laid out, and you wouldn't want that even. I mean, you could have the conversation, but it's really it's not something an experienced software developer would do. So that's essentially where that landed. So let me stop there. I've been talking for quite some time and get some feedback.
Well, I would say, Greg, that the community is free to work on that if they want to.
You're absolutely right.
If it's a 6 to 9 month project, and if there's still a bounding program or what have you, or whatever, I mean, if you do that kind of work, you will be rewarded. I mean, it's the same amount of work.
I absolutely
we'll find a way.
Yeah, that's right. If Phil or anyone else who is in favor of writing a spec wants to take that on, we can support them to the extent that we can without impacting the delivery of Mercury. But for sure, we believe in providing that spec. We absolutely want to ensure the diversity of implementation. There's no reason we don't want to do that. That's all really important stuff. But we also believe that there's a right sequencing and order. So with that said, maybe we can move on to some other updates. One piece that I wanted to talk about was what's come up now in a couple of conversations with respect to the development of identity and how that relates to the existing Rholang architecture. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I noticed that Greg is on and the Reflective team are on. I wondered, if we want to make some time and get some updates from you guys on where you are.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. Hello, everybody. Apologies for not being on the last couple of weeks. We've been very active, as I think most of you know, in looking for another limited partner to fill our fund up so we can properly fund the 23 companies that we have on board right now. That's just started in the last week. It's going as well at 100% in rocket with it going down. Nearly portfolio companies are also in the process. If they haven't already, they're getting quick to go to market themselves for capital raises. On a team side, if you've been following along, and I've seen and I've been asked on Discord, so I'll put it out here publicly. Most of you know we lost Rholang, who was one of our venture partners. He left the firm about a month ago, I think it was, at least. We also lost Lee Carter, who was one of our principals. He left to go to another fund. And then 2 weeks ago, we lost Steve Carriaga, who was one of the general partners with David and I. So he resigned a couple of weeks ago as well. So the team is down to almost half the size as it was before, but we feel very optimistic. I'm sort of calling it Reflective 2.0 is going to come out in January, and we're going to be able to take on the obligations that we have with all of the companies that we've promised and committed to. In the meantime, as you can imagine, we're not entertaining other deals or other opportunities. We are working to renegotiate the Reflective deal and the commitments that RChain has towards us. So Kenny and I have been going back and forth on that, and hopefully he and I can come to some sort of a resolution on that shortly so that we can continue on doing what we're doing. And that we did have an RChain meetup yesterday in the Reflective office, and it was great. Kevin Goldstein came on, the newest board member, so he came on Zoom from New York, and it was kind enough to give us an hour of his time for the folks that were in the office to talk to us from a board perspective. So that was very enlightening, and I would encourage all of you, if you haven't already, to reach out to him, or he's asking for input, and he seems, it's the first time I had a chance to talk to him, so he seemed really good. So yeah, I think I covered everything there. Any questions from the community for Reflective?
Greg, is the deal day event most likely delayed in December?
Yes, yeah, it is. That is not going to happen, so we're canceling that. We don't have a date set for that, but given everything that's happened and opportunity and timing and everything else, we are so heads down focused on getting this next fund in that unfortunately that one has slipped through the cracks. So we'll pick that one up though shortly. Thanks for asking.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you very much, Greg. I really appreciate the update.
Sure.
And transparency and all of it, really. I also believe that the portfolio companies are a major asset. We're very much supportive of them.
Right.
Okay, so Kenny, you have a report card update?
I do.
Awesome.
Moment. All right, so you should all be able to see my screen. So a couple things we're kind of dropping off but still need to keep track of, right? So if we're going to put out a financial report in January, we need to be planning ahead for that and making sure that we have all of the data ready to get that compilation put together. The roadmap will also be needed to go into a final draft with different visualizations than it currently is in, but that those things are probably going to come off at least this list here. So I did get some feedback finally on the member participation and governance. And so Ian had suggested that perhaps GitHub is not the right place to have some of these discussions. We might be able to attend a meetup as well. So that's just a very high level thing at this moment. I don't have any other plans other than something very informal, well, not necessarily informal, but inexpensive, but something in person to try to move this process a little bit further as well. And job descriptions, we have now links in this to all of the draft descriptions. The one that I know needs the most tweaking is the VP of Engineering. So we will definitely need to go back and do some revisions on that. But these are open for comment as well. We aren't necessarily hiring for these positions, but we do want to have a good idea of what they are and when we're able to hire them, so that we can move forward when we do have that. Some updates on some committees. So the governance and executive committee, that's a bit of a reorg. So traditionally, an executive committee is a subset of the board of directors themselves. So this would be an example of if there was an issue where the board didn't have time to investigate and do all of its due diligence as a whole, they would delegate certain members or to an executive committee that could then handle that. And a governance committee would be something like what we were doing with our executive committee. And so there's we're looking at reorganizing those two committees, and there's currently a draft charter by Mutineering or John, who drafted this in the governance channel on Discord. So there's a draft committee or draft charter that's being put out right now. It also has an example of what a charter would look like, and as well as it's very comprehensive. So please do take a look at that. And then if you'd like to get involved, either comment on that document or head over to Discord and the governance channel and join that conversation. So those are my updates. Any questions?
Thanks, Kenny.
Yep, take care. All right, and we'll get this out on the blog shortly.
Thanks, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
Kenny, there was a question that came in on Discord, or I mean on the Zoom. Any updates with regard to funding or RSong was a question for you.
I'm the one handling the negotiations there, and I can say we had another meeting with our partner last Thursday or Friday, and that went exceptionally well. So we have a good, open, candid conversation around the commercial terms, and looking to. We also have a much crisper notion of what the time frame is. At this point, I can't say much more than that without in this venue, since we're being live streamed. But I can say that we have a much greater clarity and understanding around what the quid pro quos are, and there's a general consensus that we're sort of in the right direction. So I can, for people who want to know more color and more detail, I will be happy to speak with them privately on Zoom. If you contact Lilia, she can set up a Zoom call for those people who want a lot more detail that I can't sort of mention on the call here.
Hey, Greg, I had a related question that's just, I think, a matter of understanding. There seems to be a lot of confusion within the community occasionally about the connection of RSong versus the license that's being sold versus some of the portfolio companies that are working, or at least one that's working in the music space. Can you help delineate that, because to tease apart some of the confusion that occurs sometimes?
Sure. Yeah, of course. So we have access to 5 years. We have 5 years worth of access to the immersion cloud service that uses the codec to do the encoding part of the process, and we have the right to reassign that to other parties, and that's one of the things that's being sold right now, or is under contemplation for being sold. Now that's separate from RSong, because RSong could deliver just any old audio data. We, of course, we would like to be able to deliver the immersive content as a part of it, because it is so unique and compelling to artists. And then we are engaged with a number of different potential partners to look at taking over the service once we get it to a certain point. So so each of these things are different in their their role and function within the co-op. So the co-op is not trying to be a music company. We don't want to be a music company. We want to use RSong to essentially to help drive the transaction volume and work with a partner who will take RSong from that place to a functioning music service. So that's underway. And actually, we're not just working with companies that might take this further, but we're also engaged with the potential capital partners who are interested in funding just that piece of it. So the other side of this is what is delivered. Now, again, there's a difference between the content that's delivered as was announced in Berlin. You can offer with the immersive codec. You can offer both just ordinary stereo content, or you can offer the immersive content. And we want to be able to offer both of those on RChain. And then we want to enable potential partners that we're selling access to the codec to have similar kinds of access. Fortunately, for most of our partners that we're contemplating giving access to the codec to, they are only interested in this stereo piece of the puzzle, and will be in that position for the next few years. Which means, and this is something that I think people don't quite understand, there's only one service, demo or service or whatever you want to call it, that offers a delivery mechanism for an artist, which is the RSong mechanism. That if an artist wants to get out to the market with their immersive content, there is currently only one delivery mechanism, and that is RSong. And that's an incredibly valuable position for us. And I don't think that the community quite understands that. But let me stop there and see if that's answered your question, Ed.
Oh, absolutely. And I really appreciate it. And I mean, the other thing that's exciting about RSong, in a sense, it's less exciting, but it's demonstrating, uploading content to the blockchain and then downloading content from the blockchain and a design to monetize that. And that can be applied in so many other types of content than music. So that's also an exciting part of this story.
Yeah, I agree. I want to say a bit more about that, but I know that we have Testloop here on the call, and I want to give them some
Greg,
time.
Can I just ask one quick question? Does the co-op have exclusive access to that web service?
No, it does not.
Okay, just 5 years of access for that. Okay.
That's correct.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. However, the way to understand our relationship is our partners have made a big bet. So essentially, we're the only blockchain solution that they will contemplate. So it's not that we're the only. We have exclusive access to them. They have made it effective that we're the only blockchain partner that they'll be working with. So that's the situation is a little different, or a little upside down than what most people are looking for. And that's because, and we feel that that's the right way, because regardless of what happens with the crypto market, regardless of what's the fluctuations with the crypto market, blockchain is not going away. But I want to defer this conversation and give some time to Raul, if you would like to say a few words about Tesla.
Actually, before we do that, a quick question on the definition of blockchain company. So, RChain is
actually no. I'm gonna have to defer this. We've invited them. We have 15 minutes left in the hour.
Okay.
And
Okay,
so
no problem.
thanks.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. And is there something I need to do to present? Does somebody have to enable me, or can I just independently make that happen?
You should be able to hit screen share.
Okay, and is that working for you guys? Can you see the?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I think the goal here is I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we're doing at TestLoop with our new Karmic Connected Car Network. And just as a precursor to that, my 30-second bio is I was in Seattle a long time, a developer at Adobe, recruited by Microsoft to lead Asian product management in Word first, and then ran all of Office. Did my first startup there, which was a video publishing web service kind of SaaS company. Moved to LA, did my second startup down here, which was mobile app publishing SaaS service. And TestLoop we started just about 3 years ago. And the premise of the company was that Tesla is really kind of the first incarnation of a new car that has deep connectivity, electrification, and autonomy all kind of converging together into a truly digital platform. And, for us, what we're really fixated on is this idea of connectivity, and meaning you can both monitor everything coming out of the car, but you can also kind of remotely control a lot of it, including like maximum speed and unlocking the doors and letting people start it and changing battery settings and what have you. So, with electric drivetrains, you have a significant economic win over the lifetime of the car. The cost per mile is at least half, and it may be approaching almost 3x cheaper. With autonomy, I think what we're going to see next year is on these Teslas, like a significant advancement in how little effort it is to drive and lowered collision rates. And so what we started out doing was think of it as like a regional airline, but in cars instead of planes, and really learned that, people wanted to travel in kind of a Starbucks type environment with food and drink and charging and incredible consistency. And in doing that for both ride shares and rentals, I think we earned the highest consumer ratings of any transportation company online. And we really were pushing these cars to the limits, driving them 17,000 miles a month, doing 17,000 top line revenue per car. And more importantly, pushing the APIs of these cars to the limit. We got the first Tesla fleet API agreement in the US, and we're continually pulling all the data out and sharing that with real-time partners. And I think that really opened our eyes up to, what the possibility was, like once you have this data, how it could be useful in the context of, not only our own operations with letting people in the car and letting drivers access them, but with financing, insurance, and tires and such. And so, what we were doing was for rental cars, limiting the maximum speed to 80 miles an hour, and then sharing this data with our insurance company, who then gave us lower rates. And with Goodyear, they came to us with the partnership opportunity where they started instrumenting all the cars and pulling the tire pressure and mileage off them, and really using this mobile van to go out and kind of dynamically service the cars, which saved us a ton of time because we were doing tire rotations almost every week. And now if we could do it while charging on a kind of as needed basis, it was much more efficient. We didn't have to take the cars out of service. And we also cut a deal with Sutton Leasing to, instead of doing very kind of high monthly leases, to say, hey, we'll give you a lower base rate, but then we'll pay every month the excess. So you'll get the same thing if we drive a lot, but we weren't committed to that rate if we didn't drive as much. So based on kind of the insights from all of this, it became obvious that every connected car should have a backend. It should be a wallet that contains not only all the kind of car data, but also, you know, gives you the service records and, you know, lets you manage the connectivity of the vehicle. And so with that, it became really clear that what the best kind of impact we could have is not by using our software in just the 10 cars in our fleets, but rather to say, hey, can we open this network up to anybody in the world with a connected car and give them all the benefits of, you know, kind of industrial strength software. And so we did that just a month ago, and we've just not yet started to market. We plan to really start pushing this after Thanksgiving. And the idea here is anybody can sign up. It's 90 seconds. You just do like an OAuth, like for Facebook or LinkedIn. There's no cost to the car owner, no obligations. And you get free data services like monitoring your battery charging and making sure that's good, speeding alerts if you want to set them for your teenage kids or something. And then we'll also do some clerical services like register you for HOV stickers and sign you up for other charging networks, print out your federal tax form for the rebate. And then beyond this, we think what the much bigger opportunity is to really be a service infrastructure for tire companies that want to monitor your tires and be your tire service providers, for insurance companies that want to do usage-based insurance and financing and such. So, you know, you can imagine a world that's connected where for parking, you don't need any tickets or gates or hardware. You just know where the car is. You know who owns the parking lot at that location and what the rates are. And you can completely handle this on the back end through, you know, tokenized payments, you know, that are going to be much simpler for everybody to, you know, interact with. And so this is really the vision. And we think over the course of the next year, you know, this will be implemented on a continual advancing basis. And then, you know, if you look at our goal, it's to really make this a very consumer product that anybody can use. They can sign up in 90 seconds. There's no hassle. So, you know, our current approach is we are running on credits, not tokens. We are running on a centralized service, but over the course of next year, the goal is to start to pick off parts, first like the vehicle history, keep that on the blockchain. We've implemented that in Rholang as part of our milestones with Reflective. And so the idea is once the testnet is up, we will start storing all the car history on the blockchain and then start storing transactions, and then next year tokenize, where instead of credits, you have real tokens. So, you know, what this really becomes is a platform focused on the car owner to help them share their connectivity, to manage policies, and store all the data related to their vehicles. And we think in 3 years, every connected car will want this. And then the biggest kind of economic benefit of shared connectivity in electric cars, we think, is car sharing, where instead of just having idle cars, now you can have you know, your car be managed and used on the network when you're not using it. And right now, if you look at the Teslas in LA, it's kind of sub 0.5% that are ever shared out. We think this number can easily go up, you know, 20x, 30x, something like that. So what you end up with, and we plan to implement all of this in the course of next year, is a two-sided marketplace with vehicle owners and vehicle renters that's completely automatically managed through, you know, programmatic access to the cars, programmatic pricing, all of this, which is very different than how things work on like Turo today. And in 3 years, every connected car, you know, every new car will be a connected car. And we think every car will be attached to a network. And our goal is to really be the most consumer-centric connected car network out there. Today, I think we're the only network out there. And as we move forward, we think every car maker will want something, of this category. But we plan to really focus on keeping the owners, needs at the top of our priority list. So then what it all ends up looking like is a marketplace for both vehicles and data-driven vehicle services, like services that benefit from connectivity. And I think that's a very wide range of services there. And the value of this, if you were to just kind of do some quick back of the envelope math, today, if you look at the domestic operations of all, car makers in the U.S., it's probably worth about $120 billion. If you were to have 2 million vehicles, which is just, in a very small percentage of, a little over a tenth of the vehicles created every year. If you had 2 million vehicles in a fleet making $500 a month, the value would be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So we think this is really going to be one of the biggest growth areas over the next 2 years in terms of kind of value creation through digitization, through marketplace, through network, and with a increasing support through blockchain technologies behind it. So we have a ton of great people involved in the project, and Mike Fox was on the board of Tesla, ran HP's printer business. Sebastian runs blockchain and mobility at Renault. David Orban once owned All Ether for a split second. David Moss was working with EOS. John Ellis ran technology at Ford. There's a few other people not listed here, but just, a lot of people that are very steeped in both blockchain and mobility. So we think we are, well positioned to really build the premier connected car network. So that's kind of the story, and happy to address any questions anybody might have.
First question I have is, you obviously know your market in terms of the blockchain market. Are there any current competitors out on Ethereum, Stellar, EOS, anything like this product that you guys are working on here, or service rather, potentially getting deployed on other networks, or is this one of a kind offering?
So I think there's a slew of other offerings that came up a while back, and I think the reality of them is that they're not like there are people who are like, hey, let's put Uber on the blockchain, but they don't really understand car mobility. Like, they've never moved people in cars and what have you. So we have a very detailed review of every project out there. And my contention is that there's nothing else out there that's a real network for mobility, and definitely not for connected cars. Everything else is not focused on the connected car. They're just saying, hey, let's put Uber on the blockchain, or, let's do transaction-free something peer-to-peer. But for us, if it's not focused on connectivity, it's kind of going to become increasingly irrelevant in the market, and you're competing against Uber and these other companies with an inferior product, I just don't understand how they get there. So, we've got a pretty detailed review if anybody wants to look at it. But I would say at this point, we're the only serious connected car project. We're the only one that has blockchain ambitions, and we're the only one that's open and released in the market.
I have to say, it's as I mentioned to you when we spoke down in the Bay Area, it's such an impressive offering that you put together. You've really thought about it front to back, top to bottom, side to side. Is very impressive. But the one thing I mentioned last time, and I'll mention it again, I see kind of the inevitability of the connected car, but I have to say that it goes directly against the sort of the psyche of the American, right? So maybe not the millennials, but if we look at sort of the Midwest American, right? Their car is their horse, right? It's theirs. It belongs to them. And the connected car, the notion of private ownership has completely shifted, and but by the time you sort of thought about all the things you've given up, like the fact that someone remotely can turn your car off and lock it. It's a different thing. So I wonder if you can speak to that, if you can speak to that shift, that psychological shift.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few things here going on. One is your cars are now starting to output data and have remote control, and I think this has, while this enables car sharing, it doesn't mean that just because you have a connected car, you're sharing it with other people. I think our guess is that maybe 10, 20, 30% of the people are sharing their cars in, even if they're new cars that are completely modern and connected, it's a small percentage of people who want to do that. And that's fine, great for those people. But if not, there's still a huge number of benefits. Like, don't you just want somebody to make sure your tires are always in good shape? Don't you want, more financing options? Don't you want, better insurance options? Don't you want to know every second when you pull up your screen how much your car is worth on the market, like Zillow does for houses? So I think there's a huge number of benefits that you get by connecting your car to a smart kind of back-end platform that are not antithetical to the kind of the archetypal American car dream, freedom, whatever. But as you said, I think you're seeing an increasing number of people, whether it's renting their house out or just taking Uber everywhere, who are much more comfortable in kind of sharing economy mode. And this gives them an option where they can do that. They can choose to do that every day, or they can choose to do that when they, just when they travel, to the East Coast for a week. And so they can rent a car there and it's subsidized, or, when they, no longer want to spend $800, they thought they could, but times are tight to rent it out for a few months and, just Uber around. So our feeling is that connectivity hopefully becomes open from the automakers like Tesla's is, and it doesn't become something that you have to deal with them and their networks. And I think there is a trend towards that. And I think there's an inevitable trend, but I don't know how long it'll take. Like, PCs are never closed where you have to be on MSN now if you buy, a Surface PC or something. But but we think just in general, if connectivity is done right, if the data's signed by the maker but it's owned by the car owner, then I think it's a complete win for everybody. And we want to give people the option to use that however they want to use it.
Sure. No, it makes sense. I mean, it's essentially, I think what you're saying is, it's a kind of, it's a war of convenience, right? Step by step, the convenience of being connected will trump any sort of self-image Yeah, exactly. I think the convenience is huge, and then I think the economics are huge. Like, if you can, even save, on a Tesla, maybe you're today paying $800, $900, $1,200, maybe a little more a month. If you can save a couple $100 a month, that'll be really appealing to people. And you can do that in a lot of different ways through, better parking rates and just various services and what have you. So, yeah, we think convenience is big. And even now, we talk to people who don't have the HOV sticker because downloading the form and filling it out and signing it and writing a check and a stamp and mailing it off is too much of a hassle for them. But we can make that,
2 clicks after your credit card information's in the system. So yeah, we're all about convenience.
Understood. Well, thank you so much. We're a little bit past the top of the hour. I'm running late for another call, but I really appreciated your presentation, and I hope feel free to come back. Is there a call to action? Have you guys?
So I'd say there are 2 calls to action. One is anybody who knows anybody with a Tesla, just send them to karmic.net, and it'll be like free lifetime for anybody who signs up in the near future. So it's just karmic.net, or if they come to Testloop, it links from there. And then the other call to action is we're kind of going into fundraising mode unexpectedly. So if anybody has any leads for us on potential, either very significant angel investors or institutional investors who are interested in the space, we'd love to be talking with them.
Awesome. Fantastic. So with that, let me, I know we're a little bit past the top of the hour, but can we get a quick RChain Asia update?
You bet you. I'll keep this as informative and short as humanly possible, or as utterly possible. So the big news is that the general thing that I talked about last week in terms of Korean government support for RChain has been refined and defined into a discrete set of actions. December 10th through 15th, there will be 4 days of Train the Trainers in Rholang. And we've identified the trainer, and there will be 15 to 20 university professors and postdocs and advanced graduate students who will be learning about Rholang and how to teach Rholang in a set of universities throughout Korea. In addition, just this week, the Korean government announced as a national initiative an effort to fight fake news, and simultaneously a national initiative to establish e-government within Korea. So coincidental with that week of Rholang Train the Trainers, we're also going to be getting proof and life ID and govern in communication with the ministers leading these national initiatives that are endorsed by the president. So this is going to be great for Rholang education and adoption in Korea, and it's also going to be great for 3 or possibly 4 platform partners who might end up getting good relationships with the Korean government and their really earnest and well-funded efforts on fighting fake news and e-governance.
Excellent. That's great news. So who is the trainer?
I can't say yet because I have not communicated with them yet directly, but a close friend of theirs has confirmed their interest, and I want to work out the details.
Okay, I really need to know who's representing Rholang. So it's like
you will approve wholeheartedly. Okay. I can guarantee.
Good, glad to hear it. Please keep me in the loop.
I will. I'll tell you personally later.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, guys, I have to jump to another call. But thank you for another exciting community hangout. These just keep getting better and better.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for the updates.
Yep. Happy Turkey Day.